it's Sherry Vegas, and in this candle making video I'm going to be sharing some of my absolute favorite tips, tricks, hacks, whichever you want to call it, to do with candle making. The first hack I'm going to be sharing with you is all to do with pillar candles. So when you do make your own pillar candles, especially if you are using the clear pillar candle containers or you're using the silicone molds, you have to add your wick in before you pour your wax. And a lot of the time with that, especially if you are making sort of bigger ones, more unusual shaped pillar candles, you buy your wick on the roll and you have to thread it through. Sometimes when you do that, because you're cutting your wick and it's not being treated or dipped in wax, it will get really frayed and it's really hard to thread through. So one of my favorite little tricks to do while the wax is melting down is I just dip my wick in, and that will just add that coating. I then just use my fingers to kind of get that excess wax off, and then that will give it a nice like hard coating and will make the ends not fray, which then just makes it so much easier to go and thread on through. Another hack that I always use, and this one is for pillar candles as well, is if you've ever made a pillar candle and it's come out uneven, the easiest way you can fix that so you get a nice flat bottom, and this does happen a lot with your pillar candles, is just by placing some baking paper down onto your hot plate at really low heat, placing your candle on top, and then that's just going to melt that bottom nice and evenly, and you're going to get a perfect finish to the bottom of all of your pillar candles. So this is going to be one of my biggest hacks, I would say, when it comes to candle making, and that is really looking into additives and adding additives into your wax. So you probably either have never heard about them before, because I just find that they're never talked about on YouTube, and it's something that professional candle brands use all the time. Now there are quite a few different additives depending on what you are trying to achieve. There's additives that will help strengthen the scent of your candle, that will strengthen your wax, will make your wax more shiny. We'll add UV stabilizers in so that way the colors don't change when they are, exposed to sunlight or over time. So definitely start looking into adding additives. There's a whole bunch out there. One of my favorite is just called a universal additive. I find it helps give my candles like extra strength. It helps prevent them changing color over time, so having the colors fade over time. And I also find it really helps with like locking in the fragrance, and also just makes them generally quite easier to pop out of your container, like your molds, if you are making pillar candles. But there is a bunch of different additives on the market depending on the types of candles you're making and what you want to achieve. So really look into additives and start thinking about using them in your candle making, and it's going to take your candle making to that next level where you're going to be a bit more professional and really have like amazing candles that are just so much different from just a homemade candle. So something that tends to happen quite a lot with pillar candles is tunneling. There's a few reasons to this. One, you generally have to pour your waxes for your pillar candles at a hotter temperature because we want them to contract so that way they're easier to pop out of the mold. A lot of waxes that are recommended for pillar candles will have to be poured once again at a hotter temperature, which then can also lead to tunneling. So tunneling can be caused because you're pouring your wax at a hotter temperature, and therefore air bubbles get trapped, and then as the wax starts to cool down, those air bubbles pop or come to the surface and create big tunnels. And also too, when you are pouring wax at a hotter temperature, it's going to be more expanded out, and then as it starts to cool, it's going to start to contract, which then can also cause that tunneling, which is obviously not what you want. So the easiest way to fix it is to just make sure that a little bit of extra wax you've got on hand, if you do get tunneling, use a skewer or something to poke down into your candle just to get those air pockets, and then we're going to heat that wax back up, and then just pour it in and fill that up to the top and fill all of those little spots where you might have had those air pockets, which is called tunneling, and that way you're going to get a candle that is perfect. This is also sometimes good to just do in general, because sometimes you might have a really thin surface, it might seem like it's good, but then as you do stick your skewer into the wax, you will find air pockets that you didn't know about. So it's always good to just give all of your pillar candles a little bit extra left over, so that way you can top them up at the end just by reheating that extra wax and just pouring that over the top. If you're like me with your candle dyes, it's sometimes really hard to judge what color it's going to be when that wax does set. So one of my favorite little like hacks that I like to do is I just get these clamshell molds, and every time I get a new color, especially with your liquid dyes, because they generally all just look dark in the bottle, it's so hard to tell what color they're going to look like once they do set. I like to get a bit of spare wax and add the colors in, and then add them into the clamshells, and I write the names across the top, so that way I've got a reference. Now obviously if you are changing up the ratio of your color, it might make that color stronger or lighter, but it's just a good starting off point that I know, like, you know, my mauve looks like this, my teal looks like this, you know, and I can kind of go from there. So this is what I like to do. You could also do one full clamshell with just one color at different sort of strengths. So a really strong one slowly fading to lighter, so you can see, you know, this is what 5 drops does, this is what, you know, 2 drops does, and that way you can have that. Or you could do it with different waxes as well. So if you use more than just say soy wax, you use paraffin and you use another type of wax, you could also do that as well, so you can see the difference when it does set within the different colors. But that's one of my favorite things to do. It just makes picking my colors and blending them so much easier, because I got an idea of what it is going to look like when it does start to set. If you've ever had a candle that just gets stuck in a mold and you're pushing and pushing and it is just not going anywhere, even though you've done everything correct, what you can do is stick it in the fridge or the freezer. So I like to do this sometimes. I find this particularly happens with my plastic molds. Sometimes they can just be a little bit harder to get out, but by sticking it in the fridge or the freezer, it's going to make that wax contract just that little bit, and that will give you enough that you can then pop it out of the mold and not have a complete struggle trying to get that candle out of that mold. Now something you do need to know is you definitely do not want to be adding your candles into the fridge to set. You only want to be doing this trick once the candle has set. If you do add your candles into the fridge while they are setting, you can affect that setting process. So you definitely want to wait until the candle has fully set and only do it with ones that are a little bit harder to get out, a little bit more of a struggle, but it just makes life so much more easier popping that out once it has contracted that little bit from the cold. If you are like me and you're just not that good at maths and you end up melting down too much wax for your project, and then you're left with a bunch of wax that's already been colored and you're not sure what to do with it, then one of my favorite things to do is I like to just get a silicone mold. I have like these ice tray cube molds, and I just pour all of my excess wax into one of those. Once it's set, I pop it out, and then I just have a nice cube of colored wax, and I pop that to one side. And then if I've got another project that I know I'm going to be doing the same color, I can then melt down that wax instead of melting down a new batch of wax. Now if you haven't colored it, you can do the same thing and then pop it back in with your uncolored wax, but obviously if it is colored you can't be doing that. But you can also use it if you wanted to as basically a colored block dye. So the little color dyes that you buy in the blocks, you can pretty much use it the exact same way, and you can use that block of colored wax to just dye more wax, or you can use it just to melt it back down and create a new project if you want that exact color. But it's a great way that you don't end up wasting a lot of wax. Another thing you can do, which is the exact same, is if you've made a candle and it's not quite right, something's happened to the finish or you're just not happy with it, you can always just keep that candle and melt it back down and start again. Wax, as long as you don't damage the wax by, you know, overheating it and burning it, you can melt that wax back down and reuse it. But obviously if it is colored, you just want to make sure you're putting that color to one side and not putting it back in with your uncolored wax. Well, I hope you found all of these tips, tricks and hacks really helpful. If you have any of your own, feel free to leave them down in the comments. Any really helpful little tips or tricks that you use on a regular basis when you're making candles. I am always so excited to find out new ways to do things and ways to make my life in general a lot easier when I am making candles. So feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you got any important information or anything good out of this video, please give it a big thumbs up. It really helps me out. And if you are new to my channel, I do have a full playlist on candle making, so I'll link that up there. But I also do a bunch of other tutorials, so don't forget to check out my channel and subscribe. But thank you guys so much for watching.